Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Fireside chat on mentoring through the life cycle. I must say at the outset that it is not as if boys don't need mentoring. And I say that because, I'm happy to note that today we've had a lot of men come and support us, both on the panel and in the audience. But the fact is that gender inequity across many segments robs our girls, and robs majority of our girls, I should say, of a level playing field. And therefore, it is very, very important that we set the stage to support them and enable them to ignite potential in them. The panel earlier talked about, the various needs for creating opportunity to have a very strong foundation for them. And like we heard our speaker say in the morning, educate a boy, you educate an individual. Educate a girl, you educate the family. So with that, it's very important that we support our young girls. We support them especially when they go from into womanhood, when they move for their first job, even if it's about work-life balance. They need that little bit of reinforcement where they are subject to so much gender inequity. So Ashish Dhawan and Manya Mishra, thank you so much for joining me today. And before I get into, the deeper questions, I thought let's make this a little bit of fun. So I'm going to do a quick rapid fire round in typical Karan Johar style, taking some self-mentoring tips from him, because we all know that he mentored Alia Bhatt to be the leading female actor in our country. So Manya, can I start with you? Over there. Okay, yes. Great. So image of a mentor, man or woman?
There's no gender for me.
Excellent. Is mentoring a necessity, yes or no?
Yes, of course.
Your experience with a mentor, happy or disappointing?
So much fun.
Okay. How many mentors have you had?
So many. Like
Excellent.
my mother, father.
And she's only 17, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. Your favorite mentor, I don't need a name, but a peer, parent, teacher.
Me?
She's winning the hamper.
Yeah.
Okay. One mentor for life or many mentors, but you've already answered that question. So what are the 3 essential qualities that you look for in a mentor?
A comfortable space, a good atmosphere,
Okay.
or understanding.
Excellent. All right. And what do you think is more important in your mentor? The experience or the passion to support?
Both of them.
Okay. Do you think virtual mentoring is equally effective?
Yes. For मैंने दोनों
दोनों फायदा
ही अटेम्प्ट कर रहे हैं. तो मेरा अगर मैं कंफर्टेबल फील कराती हूँ उन्हें और वो मैं हर चीज़ शेयर कर रही हूँ तो मेरे लिए वो दोनों ही कंफर्टेबल रहे हैं.
ठीक है. And what is your advice to a mentor to connect better with a mentee?
Okay. Better with mentee.
क्या बोलेंगे उन्हें कि जब छोटे बच्चों के साथ वो यंग लड़कियों के साथ काम कर रहे हैं, कैसे वो बेटर कनेक्ट करेंगे?
पहले आप उनके साथ कम्युनिकेशन कीजिए, बात कीजिए, उनको समझिए, तो आप उनको जान पाएंगे कि हाँ उनका सर्कल क्या है, नेटवर्क सर्कल क्या है, उनका गोल का, उनका एक्सपीरियंस आप उनके साथ शेयर करिए. उनके साथ सक्सेस स्टोरी ही नहीं, आप उनके साथ फेलियर स्टोरी ज़्यादा शेयर कीजिए, तो वो आपके साथ और कंफर्टेबल हो जाएंगे.
Absolutely well said. A round of applause for her, ladies and gentlemen. Ashish, that's going to be a tough one for you to match.
Absolutely.
Okay, but I'll go easy on you.
Please.
Okay, so image of a mentor, man or woman?
Unfortunately, I would say man, if I were to be honest.
Okay. Is mentoring a necessity?
Yes.
Okay. Your experience with mentors, happy or disappointing?
Excellent.
Okay. Your favorite mentor?
Someone who is 35 years older than me, a gentleman called George McCowan, when I worked in the US.
Okay. How many mentors have you had?
3 or 4.
All right. Ashish the mentor or Ashish the mentee?
More the mentee. I'm not a very good mentor.
Okay. That's honest. One mentor for life or multiple?
Multiple, and I think multiple big mentors, but also everyday people you can relate to.
Okay. What is more important according to you in a mentor? The experience of the mentor or again the passion with which they want to support?
I'll agree with my friend Manya, both, but I think passion trumps experience.
Okay. 3 traits to look at while matching a mentor to a mentee.
I think somebody who is a great listener and will take the time to understand, somebody who has great empathy, and somebody who has life's experiences, you know.
Okay. And what is the most frequent advice you give a mentee?
Just encourage the person. I think listen carefully, understand their context, and inspire, encourage, open doors, open networks, provide them skills that they may not learn in formal settings.
Okay. Thank you, Ashish. And while I would love to announce a winner, this is the social sector, and in the social sector we don't compete, we only collaborate for the collective good. So with that, let me go to you, Manya, and get into some deeper questions. Tell me, you're 17, you're in class 12, you have chosen to STEM, and I heard that you aspire to be an astronaut. So tell us about your journey and tell us about, a mentor who helped you get here.
एक सिंपल सी बिना बोलने मतलब कम बोलने वाली लड़की थी मैं, पर अब बहुत बोलती हूँ। तो सेकंड स्टैंडर्ड में मेरी फर्स्ट मेंटर टीचर रही प्रिया मैम। उन्होंने मुझे बहुत ज़्यादा सपोर्ट किया। लाइक वो मुझे हर कंपटीशन, हर एक्टिविटी के लिए मुझे इनकरेज करती थी। मान्या आओ, तुम्हें बोलना है, आ जाओ, स्पीच दो आके यहाँ पर। तो स्टेज फियर जो था वो वहाँ से ही कम हो गया था। सबके सामने बोलना, अपने आप को कैसे रिप्रेजेंट करना, वहाँ से मैं सीख गई थी। तो थर्ड स्टैंडर्ड में मैंने स्टेट लेवल कंपटीशन, राइटिंग कंपटीशन में मैं विनर रही थी। तो अब प्राइज़ मिला तो खुश होना ही था। तो बहुत ज़्यादा इनकरेज हुई और फिर मैंने प्रोत्साहन इंडिया फाउंडेशन ज्वाइन किया। वहाँ पे मेरी सेकंड मेंटर टीचर प्रीति दीदी रही, जिन्होंने मुझे पब्लिक स्पीकिंग के लिए 8th स्टैंडर्ड में विश्व युवा केंद्र में भेजा था और मैंने वहाँ पे फर्स्ट अटैम्प्ट करा पब्लिक स्पीकिंग का, स्पीच देने का, और मैं वहाँ पे भी मैं विनर रही। तो इससे मेरा बहुत ज़्यादा, एक आप समझ रहे, कॉन्फिडेंस बहुत ज़्यादा बढ़ता गया और मैंने बहुत चीज़ें एक्सप्लोर करी कि हाँ कैसे देखा जाता है, क्या हो रहा है, उसको कैसे समझा जाता है। टर्निंग पॉइंट मेरा स्टेम में आया नेस्कॉम फाउंडेशन से। वहाँ पे साइंस टेक्नोलॉजी कंपटीशन था। हम प्रोत्साहन से 6 गर्ल्स जो थी उसमें जुड़ी थी और मैं सबसे यंगर थी। तो वहाँ पे हमने GPS बैक ट्रैकर बनाया था, कोडिंग करके, टेक्नोलॉजी का यूज़ करके, उसके बारे में पढ़ के, उसके सेशंस लेकर। हम विनर नहीं रहे, पर हमने बहुत कुछ वहाँ से सीखा कि हाँ एक कंप्यूटर साइंस है, उसको हम स्किल्स के रूप में सीख सकते हैं। वो आगे आने वाले जनरेशन में बहुत ज़्यादा आगे रहेगी कंप्यूटर साइंस। तो मेरा उसमें बहुत ज़्यादा इंटरेस्ट रहा और मैं अब उसकी तरफ ही देखने के लिए, अपने इसको स्किल बनाने के लिए उसकी तरफ भूल गई मैं।
कोई बात।
तो फैमिली सपोर्ट के साथ मेरा फ्रेंड्स बहुत इनकरेज करते थे। तो मेरे लिए सब लोग मेरे लिए मेंटोर है। मेरी छोटी सिस्टर मेरे लिए मेंटोर है, या वही कभी अपनी मासूमियत में बहुत कुछ ऐसे कह जाती है कि वो मुझे ना इनकरेज कर देती है कि हाँ ये भी कर सकते हैं।
So thank you, Manya. You've just highlighted the importance of mentorship. Ashish, your journey has been one of success. I read an interview of yours, or rather heard an interview of yours, where you said that you're a capitalist at heart, and that would explain Chris Capital. But you also said in your early 20s you decided somewhere that you wanted to have multiple career paths. And that's what you did. You took a step back from Chris Capital at 42, 43 and went into the field of education. And today, of course, with the Convergence Foundation, you're into women's empowerment, capacity building and everything. So tell us, what role did a mentor play for you to achieve this goal of yours?
Yeah, so I think it started when I was young. My grandfather, my maternal grandfather, was a person who had multiple interests. He was in business, but he also started schools. Originally, the Lahore Montessori School, and then in Delhi, La Montessori. And I think listening to him, I thought that there was, it gave him greater purpose. He was more passionate about the schools than he was about making money. And I saw that firsthand, and maybe he didn't have to tell me you should do the same, but just, it was inspiring, and it just somewhere was deep inside. I never even thought about it when I was young. It was only later when I started to think about what I wanted to do that resurfaced in a sense. So that was very early. My own father, I think, is always a very humble person. So through him I learnt that, beyond a certain point, making money was not worth much, and giving back to society was more important. And then later I had this mentor in the US, George McCowan, and he basically showed me that I was capable of doing much more than starting my own firm, that this idea of a second career, because he was a multifaceted person, that you can hit the reset button at some point mid-career,
Right.
and get onto a completely different trajectory. And then I read about people who'd done it, and I got inspired to do the same.
Okay. Given your experience of working with young people, what are some of the specific challenges that girls face through the different, stages of their life, and how are you facilitating mentorship through the various models that you work in?
Yeah, so I think if you look at it, girls firstly have done well on many fronts in India. I think it's amazing that the gross enrollment ratio of girls in college today is higher than that of men. It just crossed that of men like 4 years ago. So more girls as a percentage of the cohort are going to college than men. They also, by the way, in most colleges do better than the boys. So they're doing incredibly well. So Manya, I wish you the best as you go to college. I think the real issue is that if I look at what the gaps are, and of course there are many girls who don't make it to college also, we have to look after them as well, is that there are 2-3 real issues. One is that there is despite going to college, despite doing well in school, there is still a skills deficit for girls.
Right.
Because there are many skills that are beyond education, self-management, time management, understanding the workplace, etc. And boys somehow, because of the mentoring that they get, the exposure that they get, are better prepared. So the skills deficit, I would say, is more limited for. It's not that it doesn't exist for boys; it's lower for boys. Second is the network deficit. Again, I think it's natural that boys are more exposed. They tend to be better connected. There are better networks. You have an older brother who's working, and you hear about from that brother's friends about the workplace. I think girls don't have the same networks as boys do. And also role models. I think there are many more role models for boys than for girls. It's almost an expectation that you should be a certain way, which isn't necessarily the case. It's changing, of course, in India, in many fields, including sport and entertainment and finance, where so many women have done well, or entrepreneurship.
Right.
But it's still limited relative to that of boys.
Sure. So Manya, tell me, in what way do you think mentoring can help girls navigate the challenges to achieve their goals?
मेंटरिंग गर्ल्स को बहुत उनको चैलेंजेस के साथ डील करना सिखा सकता है, और उनका जो एक्सपीरियंस है वो शेयर करके उनको, और जो उनका नेटवर्क है उसको जो आगे हम उसको बढ़ा सकते हैं.
वही जो अभी आशीष ने कहा,
हाँ जी,
नेटवर्क
सही,
डेफिसिट. हाँ जी, हाँ जी.
और उनको एक कंसल्ट फीडबैक देना.
Okay.
It's very important.
Okay.
One more thing I feel to me, of course, is also mentoring important from a breaking social norm standpoint.
Right.
I think girls often find it hard to speak back to their parents or to the father who may be forcing them to do things a certain way. To give them the confidence, to support them, that's very important. Boys, unfortunately, or fortunately for them, don't have to face that.
Right. And on that note, what would you say are some of the effective strategies for mentorship that can help girls succeed, academically and professionally?
So academically, I think girls are doing very well. I think we need to be less concerned about that. I think it's really that gap from, they have the lots of skills, lots of empathy. It's really filling these deficits. And I think mentorship is a great way, but there are other barriers beyond mentorship that one needs to look at. I think there is the issue of safety, security, and mobility,
Yes.
which doesn't enable. Often girls, if you talk to them, if you go to a poor neighborhood in Delhi, even will say they're not willing to go beyond a certain radius
Right.
for work, and they're all not working past sundown, late at night, etc. So safety, security, mobility is a key issue. I think there's also the demand side. Workplace conditions need to change. So beyond mentorship, the flexibility, they want their children to be taken care of. So you need a crash, you need flexible work hours for
Right.
women, more women-friendly environment at work. So I think all of those things, in addition to mentorship, are really important if we want female labor force participation to rise in India.
Right. And what about when people come from the rural areas, the fact that, they are from a more marginalized background, that obviously adds to their issues. So, that needs to be addressed as well.
Yeah, I think there's obviously different strategies. Women who are in the formal sector, there's that needs to be addressed in a different manner. There's some very good practices in terms of formal sector companies that are doing a great job in getting more women to join, but also getting them to persist and return back to work, creating a more welcoming environment, as it were, for women, supporting them, etc. The informal sector, I think we need other things as well. I mean, women often suffer, or women enterprises, small businesses, nanopreneurs. I think you need more market linkages. You need more for access to finance. There are lots of other barriers there, which are very different from women who go into the formal sector.
Right. मान्या, आपने काफ़ी सारे hurdles क्रॉस किए हैं. आप अपने फ्रेंड्स को क्या कहेंगे? How to overcome this barrier that they are unable to cross? It's about the mindset, right? How do you get past it?
मेरी लाइफ स्टोरी से आप समझे होंगे कि मैंने हर एक जो एक्स्ट्रा करिकुलर एक्टिविटीज़ होती है सब में पार्टिसिपेट करा, अपना जो कॉन्फिडेंस है उसको बढ़ाया, अपने फियर को ओवरकम किया. तो एक और बात कहूँगी कि अपने जो लाइफ के ना मेन लीड आप खुद बनिए, तो आपको ना पता चलेगा मेन ऑफ पर्पस ऑफ लाइफ कि आपको क्या करना है. आपको अगर कॉन्फिडेंस कम हो रहा है ना, तो आप मेरी तरह कर सकते हैं. मिरर के सामने खड़ी होइए और बोलिए, हे स्माइल, आई लव यू, यू कैन डू इट मान्या. सच में ये बहुत काम आता है, आप करिए. मैंने बहुत करा है, मेरा कॉन्फिडेंस बहुत बड़ा है इससे.
Self-belief, ladies and gentlemen, the number one item on the list. Okay, Ashish, you mentioned earlier about, the 21st century skills. And how do you plan to build capacity on the 21st century skills, which are so much broader than the learning in schools?
Yeah, it's schools are struggling with this in terms of 21st century skills, partly because the curriculum, but the pedagogy is still sage on stage versus asking children to think, asking them questions. 21st century education is all about learning to think critically for yourself,
Right.
Learning to communicate well, being confident, being able to, having a social conscience. So women already have many of those, but I think we often don't encourage our girls to think. We don't ask them what their opinion is. We tend to ask that more of boys. So I think bias starts very early on in education. But I think by and large, from an academic standpoint, as I said earlier, girls are doing very well. So the slogan we had earlier, ki beti bachao, beti padhao, I think time has come for, a colleague of mine says, betiyon ko badhao instead of padhao, because I think the padhao part is over now.
बेटियों को बढ़ाओ और देश को बचाओ.
और देश को बढ़ाओ.
Okay, and what would your appeal be to stakeholders on nurturing girls and enabling our women through not just mentorship but otherwise?
Yeah, so I think it starts at the top. Honorable Prime Minister has already talked about Nari Shakti, and I think we need to really look at our political leaders need to support this, our business leaders, so it needs to come from leadership to start with.
Right.
Two is our policies need to reflect it. We need all our policies, not just a single policy for women, have to be looked at through a gender lens. Our budgets need to be looked at through a gender lens. Are we spending enough? And then what I talked about earlier, all these enabling conditions, safety, security, mobility, there's no reason why we can't make our cities more livable from in terms of women, at least feeling safe, feeling that, Delhi did a great thing by at least making transport for free. You could go in the metro for free. I think those kinds of, I'm sorry? Only buses, sorry. And women having a separate compartment in the metro. So I think those kinds of things, the enabling conditions, looking at. And then really, as I said earlier, on the demand side, I mean, we haven't paid enough attention to creating more women-friendly jobs. Like, for instance, China will lose the game in the next 10 years on labor-intensive exports. All of those are extremely women-friendly jobs. If you look at Bangladesh's garment export industry, out of 4.4 million jobs, 4 million are women. India needs to work harder to create those jobs, because that's where women will get employed. Women are not going to be Swiggy drivers and Ola drivers. It's just not going to happen. So targeting it in a manner where on the demand side we create more women-friendly jobs, we create the enabling conditions, we have the right policies, we spend the right money, and the leadership is supporting this.
Thank you. And I cannot end without asking you about the role of digital. How do we use that for capacity building to get to these girls who are the most disadvantaged and do not have the safety, security, or for that matter, the opportunity?
Yeah, I think digital can play some role. I mean, I'm still a physical world person, so I believe physical is important. But I think, let's take safety. I think you can, obviously there's some cities where you have apps where women feel safer because somebody knows where they are, or they can push something and create an alert. So there is technology that can make you feel safer. There's clearly technology, digitally mentorship. Manya was talking about it. I think, if we had to do this at scale, what we were just talking about, mentorship, you won't be able to necessarily do it only physically. I think it's important to think about how, and there's some studies that show where digital mentoring has actually worked very well. The evidence is quite strong in terms of building women's self-esteem, encouraging them, etc. So I think we have to intelligently think about what are the 2-3 areas where we can use digital.
Right.
Digital literacy is clearly an important skill, life skill
Yes.
for women as we go forward. So I think these 3-4 areas where digital can be really useful.
Thank you. So Manya, where do you see yourself 10 years from now, and what support do you need from your mentor to get there?
इतना लंबा सोचा नहीं कभी पर 10 इयर्स बाद मैं अपने आप को एक सक्सेसफुल वुमेन ज़रूर देखना चाहूँगी जो बहुत कॉन्फिडेंट रही, और जब अपनी स्टोरी मैं किसी को बताऊँ तो मेरे को बहुत ज़्यादा मेरी आँखों से उनको पता चल जाना चाहिए कि हाँ ये कितनी स्ट्रॉन्ग और वो एक कॉन्फिडेंट पर्सन रही जिसको बहुत अच्छा लगा.
Well, Ashish and Manya, thank you so much. This was a quick session. You all have highlighted several things that we need to address: the skills deficit, the network deficit. Of course, we need more role models for our girls, and we of course need to make sure that we overcome social norms and encourage our girls to think. Ashish, I wish you more success in your journey. I hope you transform the lives of millions. And Manya, a decade from now, I would like to invite you to the 25th edition of IDEATE and hear your success story. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.